measuring the value of autonomous mobile robots. My guest is Jeff Christensen. He's VP of Product with Seegrid. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being with me. You know, AMRs or autonomous mobile robots are a big deal today. It's all in the news and everybody's rushing to acquire them. But once you have, how can you then use actual analytics or specifically fleet analytics to achieve visibility into your material flow? How do you combine all that together?
Well, that's a great question. It goes with any new tool that you might bring into your operation, and AMRs are no different in that way. So first, start with some baselines. What are your hypotheses of how it's going to perform? Work with the vendor to help define those things, to make sure that you understand what you expect it to do, and how the quantification of those expectations will work. So learn how to read it, learn how to just understand the baseline, and then you can start doing the more interesting things. You can identify outliers or exceptions in your operation. And it's not exactly the same as how you might have been tracking those movements with human drivers or other kinds of automation or things like that. This is going to automatically collect it, so it's going to be more visible. You don't have to do anything extra to collect that data, but you do need to understand what it means, what it doesn't mean, just like any other data. Yeah. Make sure that you know what conclusions you're drawing from that. And then I think a critical thing is to use that data within the time frame of action. And what I mean by that is, if I look at a report that got posted on the bulletin board and it shows what happened last quarter, there's very little I can do about that. Mm-hmm. So if I can look at data within the time frame of things that are actually happening, where I can take action on it. So if the data shows that my top line throughput for this shift is a little bit below par, then there's something I can do about it before the shift is already over. So so look at it within the time frame that I can actually do something about it. And then you can do lots of interesting things, comparing shift to shift, facility to facility, et cetera.
What are your expectations based on? How do you set the benchmarks in the first place against which to measure the performance of the AMRs?
Well, I think that's a combined effort in our experience between the vendor and the customer who's running the operation. The customer knows their operation, and the vendor understands what the automation is going to do for them. And sit down and have a discussion about, well, these are the tack times, these are the workflows that are expected. This is what the data looks like for those tack times and for those workflows and for the throughput that you expect. And draw those up early on, beforehand. Make sure that everybody is on the same page there, so everybody's speaking the same language.
Okay, we're speaking so generally of using the word data. It could mean so much. What kinds of data specifically are most useful in this effort?
Yeah, data is it's like water. It does everything, and it means everything to everybody, and it's everywhere, right? So I think that the goal of data is to glean information in order to make a decision and then execute an informed action based on that. That's the overall goal. So then what data will get you to that goal? And I think of it, there's sort of a maturity over time of how you use data and for what purpose, and then the value that you get out of it. And I think in the AMR space, it's still early days. I think we're still in pretty early phases of descriptive data, kind of, what happened, right? What happened yesterday, what happened last month, that sort of thing. That gives you some hindsight onto that problem. And if you start moving a little bit forward and get to diagnostic, or what is happening, why is it happening? I think of that as oversight of what is happening right now. And there's lots of different data variables and things like that. But if you just think about it operationally and the business value that you can get out of it, think of that as oversight. And then as we move forward as an industry and all of this becomes more interesting, frankly, and more mature, then you get to predictive, right? What will happen based on all of these things, what will happen? That gives me some foresight. And then eventually I'm really getting close to that informed action. I'm getting prescriptive. What should I do? right? That's an insight that I can get out of that data. So
Yeah.
there's sort of life cycle or journey that that data is on, and we've seen this play out in other technologies that have been around for a long time and have more of this sort of data maturity. And AMRs are along that same path, and I think it's going to get down that path, frankly, faster than some of the older technologies had, because we now have the benefit of how to use this data to be effective and valuable for business challenges, not just an interesting sideshow.
Yeah. Well, a term you have not yet used in our conversation, but the moment you start talking about prescriptive, we're talking about artificial intelligence, are we not? AI? We
are. Yes, absolutely. So if you want to get a really rich understanding of data, the core competencies of machines versus the core competencies of humans, finding a really interesting patterns in large data sets is a great thing for an artificial intelligence to do. They're really, really good at that. So yes, we're talking about once you get toward predictive and prescriptive, now you're applying machine learning and artificial intelligence against this corpus of data in order to glean those sort of foresights and insights of what should I be doing, and that's absolutely how that's going to be applied.
Interesting. Now, the use of AMRs takes the physical duty away from a human, but when we're talking about massaging the data and using predictive data, are we not also taking away the analytical aspect of it away from humans and putting that into the hand of a machine? Is the system in fact telling us what to do, or is there still a human at the end making that ultimate decision as to what they're going to do based on that input?
Well, I think that the machines and the data itself can get you closer and closer to those decisions and the action that comes from it, but there are almost always some variable that wasn't in the data set, or something that that wasn't understood. And so I think that a human in the loop as a part of those decision processes will be around for a long time. Whether they will be there forever, I don't know, right? It really depends on what level of intelligence the system can bring and can prove itself that it is making, frankly, at least good enough decisions, or eventually better decisions than we would have made otherwise, right? And this is what we've seen this in artificial intelligence in games, right? So Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov in chess many years ago, and showed that but chess is relatively simple, maybe not for me, but for a computer it's relatively simple. Yeah. And then when it played Go, Go is a much more complicated game than chess. And when artificial intelligence was beating, world masters at Go, one of the really interesting things that, analysts were looking at that is that it was making moves that no human Go master would have made. Yeah. Right. And that was a really interesting turning point, I think, in AI. So I think eventually it gets there, but operationally within this AMR data for I think quite a while, there will still be a human in the loop that's analyzing and understanding and maybe, knowing a little bit more context of the operation that might not even be in the data set yet.
Well, if we could use the parallel of the Go game for a moment, when it did those moves that were incomprehensible to humans, the machine then didn't say, oh, here's why I did that. It just did it. Correct. And so in the warehouse with an AMR and the analytics and the IA and the AI output, do we need to know why it's making these decisions, or should we just trust it and go with it?
Well, I think that, trust is such a big issue. And, what we're talking about is robots moving heavy materials in an operation where there are people around them and things like that, as opposed to, moving stones on a Go board. So the trust issue, I think, is more important. And I think that we do need to understand why this decision was made, or why that choice was made, or why that route was taken. So I think that building that kind of trust, trust is earned, from an AI, just like it is earned between people. Yeah, I think that's a necessary step before you establish that trust and kind of turn over the reins fully. So I suspect that that'll probably take a while, and the bar is high for trust in this hybrid environment when there are people around, and you need to be able to predict the actions of that robot that's next to you in order to feel comfortable.
And machine learning, by definition, the machine is learning and becoming more trusted as it learns how to make the right decisions, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Well, great. Thanks, Jeff, for helping me to understand just how analytics can be merged into the physical robots, the AMRs. And I really appreciate having that conversation with you. I do want to turn for a moment here to talk a little bit about Seegrid specifically. Where do you guys fit into the picture these days? What are you bringing to the marketplace? And what are you really excited about in terms of helping companies in these very difficult times?
Well, we are certainly in the robot space, but when I talk to our own employees and customers, I say that Seegrid is a material flow company, not a robot company. That's the problem that we're trying to solve, is this operational material flow to lower risk and lower uncertainty for customers, give them a better top line and a better bottom line. I think that that's what mobile automation can do. So certainly we bring robots to the table. We're the market leader in the United States for mobile robots for industrial settings. And so we do a lot of this. We're well over 6 million miles in customer sites moving all this material around. So we know a lot about these operations and moving of that material. And I think the really interesting ground that we're moving toward is the space in software and data and things like that. I think that the future of the mobile automation is going to be more software, less steel, if you will. Moving toward the software and the data angle. That's where the higher value is going to be once the robots are already in place.
So you feel that your customer base and future customers are understanding the need for that now? Once we got past the dazzle of just the physical, sight of these robots doing their thing, that the software aspect is becoming more important as customers come to you with their pain points and their needs.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's all about where the business value is and where the business challenges are. It's not about technology for its own sake. I am a technologist, but that no one cares about a new technology if it doesn't solve a valuable business problem. So we really want to focus on what those problems are, and coordination of multiple robots and optimization of an overall workflow and material flow at a full site. That's where the higher order value is going to come, and that's software. So there's tactical bits that the robots have to do, and the dazzle, as you say, right? When we're in a brand new site where it had no automation, there is a lot of raised eyebrows as the trucks go by the first few times. But once you get that, that's the foundation. You have to have that, but then you can build upon that foundation into coordination of all of these robots and visibility, and then you get into your continuous improvement cycle. Now that you have applied this new technology, we think of it as you build or define what your application is, you execute and manage that, you analyze the results. You come up with an optimization strategy, you put those into the build cycle. It's the standard Deming cycle that we've been working with for many, many decades. It just happens to be using a new technology.
Okay. Well, listen, Jeff Christensen of Seegrid, thanks again for talking to me about the bringing together of data analytics and AMRs in warehouses and distribution centers, as well as a little bit about Seegrid itself. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.